All right, it's the top of the hour, so we're going to go ahead and get started with tonight's webinar. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We are excited to bring you another session in the Immune Deficiency Foundation's Living Well with PI series. Tonight's featured topic is caregiving for chronic illness, led by Jocelyn Cooper of the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition at the Black Women's Health Imperative. My name is Emma Mertens, and I'm the Program Manager for Education at the Immune Deficiency Foundation. On behalf of IDF, we thank you for tuning in to this virtual event. Throughout this series, we will explore lifestyle management topics through a PI lens, informing and empowering our community to live life to the fullest. Through your participation in these programs, we aim to further our mission to engage and empower the PI community through education. During portions of tonight's talk, we will offer audience polls. When a question pops up on your screen, you may submit a response by clicking one of the presented options. Also, a reminder that closed captioning is available. This webinar is made possible by our wonderful sponsors. It is due to their partnership and contributions that we can provide programs like this for the PI community. Please join me in thanking today's sponsors. Before we get started, a brief disclaimer. Please remember that information presented during this meeting is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. We are here today as a trusted source and friend to provide you with information. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified medical provider with questions concerning a health condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it based on information presented during an educational event. All right, we are going to kick things off by asking you to answer a quick question using the Zoom polling feature. We'll give it about 30 seconds for everyone to answer. Our question is, how well do you understand the emotional, logistical, and systemic challenges caregivers face in rare disease communities? All right, so 30 seconds is up. Hopefully everyone got a chance to answer. It looks like we have a good mix of people's level of familiarity with these topics in the audience. So many people saying moderately, some slightly, some extremely well. So a good mix of folks in our audience tonight. Thank you so much. All right. And with that, I am so pleased to introduce our speakers for this evening. Jocelyn Cooper serves as the Program Manager for the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition at the Black Women's Health Imperative, where she leads initiatives to address disparities in rare disease care. By collaborating with diverse stakeholders, she leads efforts to collaborating with diverse stakeholders, she drives efforts to promote health equity, increase awareness, and ensure access to care for underrepresented populations. With over a decade of experience in public health education, program management, and trauma-informed advocacy, Jocelyn is known for her commitment to community outreach and her expertise in developing inclusive, trauma-sensitive strategies. Her work reflects a deep dedication to advancing equity and supporting marginalized communities. Jocelyn is joined by Holly Jones, Executive Director of HERstory In Color, who will be sharing her personal journey as a caregiver. We look forward to hearing from you both, Jocelyn and Holly, on how to best support our caregiver communities. Thank you for joining us and welcome to you both.
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you for having us this evening. I'm going to pull up my presentation, so bear with me for one moment. All righty. So thank you so much again for being here tonight. As Emma and the IDF team stated earlier, we're super excited to be here with you and to provide information. So at the beginning of this presentation, we'll go over a few things, but I want to start by saying thank you so much to the Immune Deficiency Foundation, IDF, who's a great partner of RDDC for inviting us to be a part of this great conversation centered around the Educational Living Well series. It's super important to keep these conversations going, but also to normalize them, right? And so we're super excited to be here tonight, and I'm super honored to be able to bring one of the RDDC Coalition members, as well as a member of our Patient Caregiver Advisory Board, Holly Jones, to join us later in the conversation. So I just want to highlight very quickly what we're going to talk about this evening, just to make things a little bit easier for everyone. So today's presentation will focus on like the unsung heroes around rare disease and chronic illness care, which is caregivers. So often we spend a lot of time, as we should, right, focusing on the patient, but it's extremely important to make sure that we're keeping their support system, their village in mind. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So we'll highlight some insights from RDDC's recent Rare Disease Inequities Report, which is centers around some great data. And then we'll also bring in Holly's powerful perspective as both a caregiver and a patient. She knows both sides of the spectrum. And so, as a mom, she knows everything in between. So we're super excited to hear from her as she navigates her journey. So know that tonight we're going to spend some time exploring the emotional, the physical, the mental components and labor associated with being a caregiver and living well with PI, but also with other chronic illnesses or rare diseases. And we want to make sure that we walk away with a few tips and tools and best practices on how to support these individuals. All right. So, first question, gonna check in because I don't like necessarily solely lecturing. I want to make sure that this is an engaging activity for everyone, right? And so, how many of you know someone that's a caregiver? Feel free to drop a one in the Q&A box as they post it. How many of you all know someone that's a caregiver? All right, so I see some great responses, some engagement, individuals saying, yes, I absolutely know someone that's a caregiver, or it could also represent that you yourself are a caregiver, right? All right, so thanks so much for your participation. That gives me great insight and Holly as well as we prepare to move forward. Okay. So, really quickly, I just want to let you know a little bit about the organization that I work with and advocate for. So, I am an employee of the Black Women's Health Imperative and a signature program that they have there called the RDDC, affectionately known as it's the Rare Disease Diversity Coalition. And so, our overarching goal is to create a ripple effect for positive change centered around transforming lives and advancing equity for the rare within rare. So for us, the rare within rare looks like diverse populations that are often marginalized or minoritized when you talk about being inclusive to clinical trials or research or other health matters. And so for us, that's the core audiences that we focus on serving from a rare disease perspective. It's Black and African American communities, Latinx, Hispanic, Indigenous, and Asian communities. So sometimes you see individuals use the terminology like BIPOC. And then we also have LGBTQIA plus, people living with disabilities, the rural and medically underserved populations with limited socioeconomic resources, and also the uninsured or underinsured populations. So, as I shared in the beginning, and so did Emma, what we'll be highlighting really quickly that's kind of driving this conversation for today is centered around the Rare Disease Inequities Report, right? In August of 2024, the RDDC, which has three phenomenal working groups, came together under the Patient Provider Caregiver Journey Working Group and decided to put together a project that would help really get some data centered around rare disease and chronic illness and make sure that we're highlighting key components and barriers associated with minority or diverse communities. And so that's what this particular project focuses on. We're going to share this resource at the end. It's like a 30 plus page report. So you're just getting a glimpse of it today, but feel free when we share that resource at the end that you're making sure that you share it with your audiences. Feel free to let us know if you have any future presentations you'd like us to present in. Myself or my executive director, Jennifer Waldrop, do this often just to make sure that we're, again, normalizing the conversation centered around this information. We want to make sure that not only have we gathered this data, but that we're creating platforms and being a part and collaborating and sharing platforms like with IDF today to share this data and make sure that individuals are aware. So just so you have a broader overview of the population that was gathered in our data. The great thing that we're so super excited about it is that it doesn't just cover patients living with rare disease. As you see, we were able to connect with almost 3,000 individuals, 2,800 plus, and that 78% of those were actually individuals living with rare disease. But we had a good 22% of our respondents that were able to share their insights into the rare disease journey that are also caregivers. And so we know that that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'm going to provide some preliminary findings that really drive why we're here today. When you talk about rare diseases or chronic illnesses or just healthcare in general, from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective, individuals that fit into diverse or minority categories tend to have a longer diagnostic journey, meaning they have greater delays in diagnosis. It's a challenge for all, but they have a greater delay in diagnosis. And so, one of the key things that we often talk about at RDDC and with our partners is making sure that the diagnostic journey improves, and that's centered around access to genetic testing. And so, this clip that you see highlights that 85% of individuals, no matter whether they were in the underrepresented populations or in the represented populations, experience situations where genetic testing was not offered. So that means that it took them longer to get to their diagnosis for a rare disease. It took them longer to get to their diagnosis for their chronic illness, whether it was PI or some other condition. So that's something to keep in mind. Individuals just weren't even offered the opportunity to necessarily connect with a genetic counselor. And we know that there are a lot of different variables that play a part in why this took place, but we also know that the history of this country plays a great role in that as well. So that's one of the things that we want to highlight first, right? That it's super important to make sure that genetic testing is something that's offered to other individuals and that we highlight subsidized or support services, sponsorship services associated with that, so that individuals can get the testing that they need. Because so often individuals know that it's very costly, whether you're insured or uninsured. It doesn't matter if it's public or private, but there are a lot of different steps and components that go into genetic testing. And so we just want to make sure that we're working with great organizations and partners to make sure that the community, you all at large, are having the conversations with your providers about genetic testing, even if they don't mention it to you. So that's something to bear in mind. It is certainly your right to request that and to have that conversation with your provider. After all, it's a partnership and a connection. All right. So the next part that we want to make sure we highlight from a summary perspective is that out of all of the underrepresented respondents for this particular survey, this taps into a summary of the numbers centered around our core audiences that we talked about. Okay. So we had over 1,200 unique individuals that fit into one of those unique core audiences that we talked about. So that'll highlight the percentages and things that you see today in the survey results that we'll discuss shortly. All right. So one of the things that we're sure that individuals know about from a general perspective as it relates to, financial barriers for anyone that's considered a rare disease or chronic illness warrior is centered around the financial barriers. So often individuals talk about challenges associated with their care, caring for their family, And the financial component is huge. When people are often diagnosed with a chronic illness or a rare disease, it does shift life quite a bit. And so it often impacts finances because of the illness or condition. Individuals may have to not necessarily always stop working together, but that is a real part of some individuals' journey. But it may be because someone needs additional care, they had to cut back on hours at work, or they had to take another job role or position that had fewer hours or things of that nature. So, as you see highlighted here from the survey results, some of the financial barriers are centered around someone's inability to afford something within a year's time frame that we asked, 12-month period. And so it was things that we would consider necessities, for everyday life. So we have the prescription, medications, medically necessary food and supplements, because we know that for rare diseases or condition, more than 90% of the conditions do not have FDA approved treatments. So a lot of individuals are treating this with different types of homeopathic, supplemental cares or treatments, on their own. So they need those supplements just as they would need a prescription if that's the route that they've chosen or taken. And then to see a provider regularly, right? They're just their general health provider. We're not even talking about a specialist. We're not talking about someone that specializes in their particular rare condition. We're just talking about a financial barrier, maybe centered around the copay, the deductible, things of that nature associated with individuals seeing their provider, creating a financial barrier in their household or home. And then we have, of course, the follow-up care. If you're living with a chronic illness or living with a rare disease, we know that doctor's appointments may often be more frequent than the average individual. And so that's why we wanted to highlight those key component factors. That's why those four arrows are there, just to call out that all of these things are valid for sure. But those are the four that we're highlighting as some of the most frequent in both a qualitative and quantitative component. When we're hearing stories and feedbacks from patients and caregivers, this is what we're hearing about in terms of things that are weighing greatly on the entire family or support system. Okay. So here we go again, breaking that number down just a little bit further so you can get greater context into what it looks like for a rare disease warrior. So individuals couldn't afford the cost of a visit, right? And so as you see, the minoritized communities, BIPOC, Hispanic, LGBTQ plus seem to have some of the greatest numbers. And that's what you're going to see consistently during some of the slides that we share. Okay. So you'll see that similar component or breakdown in the next slide as well. So if individuals fall into any of those minoritized communities, they seem to have a greater challenges associated with certain things. So this one is centered around you couldn't afford the cost of the visit. And the next one is centered around you were experiencing housing instability, food insecurity, or worried about just your basic needs being met. Like, how are the lights going to be on? So, one of the things that we often talk about is, even when people are receiving assistance and support, whether it's through a financial program where it's 340B for their meds or something else of that nature, foundation assistance for medications as well, or any treatment, it's super important to recognize that people have challenges. If individuals have challenges on how their basic needs are going to be met, them taking medication or treatment or things of that nature falls farther down the list. So it's super important to recognize that it's not just about taking your meds and being done with the process. They are a whole person and have a whole life. And so all of these components and touch points are super important. So as you see here, individuals that living in poverty or of a lower socioeconomic status have the greater challenges associated with housing instability or food insecurity. And then next to them, we see the LGBTQ plus individuals that completed the survey being right next to them as it relates to having greater challenges with those same issues. All right. I just want to stop and pause for a moment to see if anyone has any questions or anything of that nature as we plan to navigate right into our situation about caregivers and living well with PI and other chronic illnesses.
Jocelyn, we are going to actually save Q&A for the end, so you can go ahead and keep on going with your talk.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So, what is a caregiver? So, a caregiver is a person who provides care regularly. That probably seems like a little bit of a redundancy or tautology, but you have to call it out as that because so often the conversations, like what Holly will share later, that we talk about is that individuals have preconceived notions about what caregiving is and what that looks like and who is it for. And the truth is, it's something for everyone. And so that's one of the things that we want to keep in mind tonight as we keep going with this conversation. So caregivers can absolutely be parents, it can be partners or spouses, it can be siblings, friends, or even children. And so sometimes some of these components are forgot about because some people serve in official roles, right? It might be an employer or someone that you hired, right? A nurse, a CNA, or something of that nature, a medical assistant. But it also can be others that step into that role for the individual living with the chronic illness informally. So all caregivers offer, remember, critical support, often with little recognition. All right. So we do have a checking in question here that I want to prompt you with. So what's the first thing that comes to mind for you when you hear the term caregiving? And please drop your thoughts in the Q&A box. But what's the first thing that comes to mind for you when you think of the term caregiving? We'll be excited to see your responses. And I know Holly probably is too. All right. So I see lots of great responses here, right? I see individuals saying love, minding risky behavior, a support system, kindness. I love that someone put overwhelmed, support, trying, happiness, pain, all of those valid. Someone put 24/7. Yes, overwhelmed came up once more. Thank you so much for your participation and for sharing. So all of those things are valid, and you'll see that kind of encompassed in this general survey result that we had here regarding our inequities in rare disease. So what you see at the very top is individuals saying you were overwhelmed from managing your life or caregiving responsibilities. 50% of the individuals that were respondents provided that, right? The individuals that were caregivers said, I was overwhelmed from just managing life, just from managing the day to day, just from managing the caregiving responsibilities. And all of that certainly speaks to what you all just shared. And then in the meantime, we also want to highlight those two stats that you see at the bottom that talk about how an individual, again, experiencing housing instability and food insecurity and worrying about their basic needs was important. Sometimes people look at numbers like 17% and say, oh, that's not a lot, but that is a great number when you're talking about individuals missing out on their basic needs. Okay. So, the other key component when you talk about just managing the day to day associated with being a patient or a caregiver living with chronic illness or supporting impacted by it, it's centered around being able to fill out all of those forms, all of that paperwork, understanding it, and what you're exactly supposed to do. That can contribute to the burnout. That can contribute to an individual being overwhelmed. And so 9% of individuals responded to that. And we wanted to make sure that we highlighted that statistic as well. So you all mentioned some of these in your great answers and responses, and I'm sure others were thinking it, some of the common caregiving duties that we think about are centered around personal care, which is highlighted to think about day-to-day activities, hygiene and things of that nature, helping people get out of bed and things of that nature. Mobility assistance is another component that people often associate with caregiving, just helping people get around. Dietary assistance or food support. So this might include meal prepping and things of that nature, financial support as well. Household tasks like cleaning, organizing, getting things together. There's a transportation component that people often associate with caregiving, right? Where they might think, oh, I need to get the person coordinated in terms of going to doctor's appointments, for grocery shopping, whatever it might be. There's a medication management component that is associated with caregiving when people think of it off top. They often say, like, oh, yeah, I need to make sure that I help so and so get their pill bottle filled, that I get things organized for them as it relates to their medication. I need to make sure that they're taking it on time, getting that schedule together. All of that is naturally associated with caregiving. And then care coordination. So the care coordination piece may also be associated with getting if you have someone coming in to offer additional support to the individual or family, that's getting that calendar scheduled together, getting appointments and things of that nature together for individuals, for different doctors, the primary care doctor, the specialist, all of that. And so that's a key part of some of those common things that we think of as it relates to caregiving. And associated with that, we want to highlight some specific caregiver data that came back from the survey that we had, right? So it shows you how the percentage of caregivers that agree strongly with these statements, right? And we just called out four. But again, all of these responses are valid. So someone said, since I have been a caregiver, my financial situation has decreased. That means they have a greater financial burden. They more than likely have a loss of income, which is something that we hear often when individuals are living with a rare disease or chronic illness. And so you see the variance, the big difference between individuals in represented or what's considered a majority or a majority white or Caucasian population versus the underrepresented population. You see that out of those respondents, it was a greater number. My health is affected by the care situation. So individuals serve as a caregiver, and while they themselves may or may not be living with a chronic illness or diagnosed with a rare disease, they have still experienced health challenges as a result of serving as a caregiver. So that's something to keep in mind, that their health can be impacted and infected too by just being a caregiver and serving in that role. The care takes a lot of my own strength. So we again see the numbers and the differences between the underrepresented respondents population in the center column versus the represented population. And you see that there's a greater percentage there. The last one highlighted here as it relates to caregivers is I am worried about my future because of the care I give. So that's something that's super clear, right? I'm just not sure. There's a bunch of uncertainty centered around this entire situation. And because I serve in a role as a caregiver, I am not certain or feeling confident about certain things. And so these were the respondents and participants' honest and open-hearted answers as it relates to their particular situation. But it was good for us to get this information because, again, it lets us know while these topics, like what IDF is, hosting tonight, is so clear and so important to make sure that we're highlighting this. So what we have here is a few specific caregiver highlights for those things that we just mentioned, but it's broken down just a little bit more for us so we can kind of see the data of which of the core audiences or diverse communities is impacted and what do those numbers look like. So you were overwhelmed just from managing life, care, or caregiving responsibilities. And we see that individuals that identify as a part of the LGBTQ plus community, as well as poverty, Hispanic, and BIPOC kind of rank the highest in these particular regards. And then the same for if you were feeling stressed anxious, drained, or hopeless. We see that as well. So you see, again, those recurring themes where certain audiences, as it relates to being either a patient or a caregiver within the chronic illness or rare disease space, um, continually express feeling a greater level of challenges as it relates to navigating this health journey. So, keeping that in mind, I want to just ask you really quickly. We've talked about, and I highlighted very quickly, what are some of the common caregiver duties, right, that we often associate with if a person does A or X rather, then we consider them, oh yeah, that's a caregiving duty or they're a caregiver. But I want to challenge you because we all do it to some degree and in some capacity in our own lives every day. Please drop your thoughts in the Q&A box and share, how do you show up as a caregiver in your community, even if it's not labeled as like a conventional caregiving way. So think about it. Just take a moment to reflect on it. How do you show up as a caregiver in your community, in your village, in your support system? How does that look for you, even if it's not labeled that way? But we all have some of that. So feel free to drop that in the Q&A box. All right. I see some great responses here. So we have cooking a meal or doing laundry. Yes, absolutely. We see rushing a person to or getting to the ER, meaning like showing up for them. Absolutely. Someone also put helping coordinate appointments for family members or neighbors. All right. Someone put loving them, like just loving on someone. Helping manage the schedules for doctor's appointments. Yes, absolutely. It says, I'm one of the people that's contacted when they're upset. I love that you put that on there because we're going to talk about that. Someone also put just listening, just listening. That absolutely can be viewed. And then it says, someone put meal preparation, transportation, med management, symptom checks in, coordinating appointments. Someone also put helping with claims and understanding billing and insurance. Absolutely. And then we also have another great response that says, I'm currently staying with my elderly mother while my sister is out of town. While she's pretty independent, she does benefit from having help with daily household chores. Absolutely. And then someone shared that they're a community health worker and that they advocating for positive lifestyle choices. So educating others about nutrition and medication management is how they show up as a caregiver in their community. I love that so much. Thank you all so much for your participation. We appreciate your engagement. These are some really awesome responses, and you'll see why I asked the question that I asked. You all are right on target already. So, caregiving tasks that are often overlooked. All right. So, we see that we have several listed here. The first one is like navigating cultural barriers. So, depending on where individuals are in life, it's not always centered around language, but that certainly can be. But it also can be faith-based culture as well. Having to help individuals navigate that with their doctors, with their, support team. It may not necessarily just be with their providers, too, right? They also may need to navigate that their health diagnosis or whatever that is with their church, their worship center. That's something to consider too. Someone already called out being a listener. Listening is one of the most significant caregiving tasks that's often overlooked. I think it's because often people will say, oh, that's what you're supposed to do anyway. But the reality is, if we reflect and take a moment and think about our own lives, there are a lot of people that don't do it, even for us. People don't do it every day. It could be for whatever reason, right? They may know harm, but they may not have time or whatever. So having someone that listens is a key caregiving component that can make a difference in someone's life. Okay. We have here navigating, addressing systemic racism. That certainly can be something, especially when you're talking about a health equity perspective, because studies do show that often people in diverse communities are not listened to as much. Their symptoms are often ignored. People think they have a higher tolerance for pain. The system and list goes on and on and on as it relates to it, right? And so these are things that often are can make it very weary and burdensome for the patient themselves. So having a caregiver that shows up and helps provide support and navigating that makes a huge difference in terms of not just viewing it from a lens of, well, this is life and this is a journey and it is what it is, but honoring that component and saying, you know what, they really are helping me navigate this and they really are helping that person navigate all aspects of it. One of the other things that I just want to call out is being a mentor to someone. So Holly serves in that role, and she might talk about that a little bit later. But as a person living with a chronic illness and rare disease, individuals tend to get to a certain place in their own journey, and then they start connecting with other individuals that might be recently diagnosed or things of that nature. That is a form of caregiving and showing up in that way, mentoring people and helping people learn how to advocate for themselves. But the last one that I definitely want to call out, because it certainly was called out in the questions, when in the responses when you all answered, is showing up. It's so important. Just showing up sometimes it's not just enough, but sometimes it is what a person needs in terms of knowing that they're not alone. All right. So these are some emotional and cultural tasks that often tend to get overlooked and aren't always considered. The individuals don't always view them as like, hey, when I think of caregiver, I think of this by default, right? But these are essential tasks that are often overlooked. So while they are overlooked, they are so important to the journey of the individual living with a chronic illness or living with a rare disease. So let's keep that in mind. And these may be conversations that you have to have with your loved ones and your support system and village, because I know that there is a variety and array of individuals on the call. Okay. All right. So really quickly, I want to talk about how we hold space for rare warriors. So, one of the ways that we can do that is by just acknowledging the fact that caregiver burnout really is real and that it can include fatigue, isolation, and anxiety. I've spoken with so many caregivers that often sit in a space where they don't really spend a lot of time or have a lot of time to spend with other individuals because they are so committed to their caregiving role. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's no judgment around that. But that person or individual needs support. So it's super important to make sure that so that they can be the best version of themselves, whether it's as a caregiver or another role, that they take care of themselves. Because caregivers hold a significant amount of space for patients or individuals living with chronic illness or rare diseases. And so they are trying to facilitate joy and happiness and humanity and hope for these individuals. So it's going to be important that they're at kind of their top tip shape as it relates to them being able to connect. And that's hard to do if they're burnt out, if they're worn out, if they don't have the support that they need. So everything doesn't just fall on the caregiver. It's about, connection. One of the things that I often highlight is just as an individual is more than their diagnosis, because people are more than their diagnosis. It's so important to recognize that a caregiver is more than the tasks that they complete. So I'll say that again. Just as we highlight that individuals are more than their diagnosis, it's extremely important for us to acknowledge and recognize that caregivers are more than the tasks that they complete. They're more than the things that they do for the people that they love or get paid to take care of. At the end of the day, all of this is about relationships. It's about connection. It's not just about checking a box on a list. Yes, getting the task and things of that nature are important, but it's super important about connection. And the reason why is because, like, a significant part of my background is in traumatology. I think, as you all heard from my intro, in mental health support. And what I've learned over the years is individuals, no matter what the diagnosis is, because my background is in HIV, it's in sexual assault and anti-trafficking and all these things. 47% of individuals report consistently that if they have a support system, then they do 40%, 47% better in terms of health outcomes. So if they have a better support, social support network, health support network, it helps reduce anxiety, it helps reduce depression, and it creates 47% greater health outcomes for them as a whole. And part of that is because they're getting different types of support as a whole, but it's also centered around a lot of the mental health burden is lessened because they're not alone. So the important thing so often is not just letting the patient know that they're not alone, it's letting that caregiver know also that they're not alone during the process. Okay. So I'm sure that many of you have served as both patient and caregiver to some degree. So I would love to hear your insights on what do you feel are some practical things maybe that institutions could do to better support caregivers. Drop your questions or I'm sorry, drop your responses and thoughts in the Q&A box. So what do you think are some things that institutions could do to better support caregivers? You all might be like, Jocelyn, that question is it's a little hefty, but no problem. I'm going to help you get the conversation started. So, some of the things in a practical sense are centered around just making sure that we provide supplies that individuals need, right? Sometimes there's an assumption that people will automatically be granted these things or that they'll be given them, and that's just not always the case. So it's a number of different things that have to be navigated and managed as it relates to how do individuals show up? All right. So we got the home adjustment component here listed, travel planning, as well as advocacy. So I'm going to check in to see what you all said to get some great insight and starting points. So great. I love that someone said that more information is one of the first things that came up, right? Someone said more information. We just really want you to provide more information. And it's so true. So often, and especially at the RDDC, like Patient Caregiver Advisory Board, one of the things that we probably hear every single meeting is that individuals talk about living with a rare disease or chronic illness or both. And they say, at the beginning of my journey, I didn't know anything. And even now, years into my journey, there's still so much I don't know. So that's super important to recognize. The more information is so key. I also see how it says offering a car service, more options as a whole, offering to help out. And we see things like paying caregivers who may have had to leave their job to supply care. That's so key. Less prior authorizations, yes, as it relates to getting medications and treatment for individuals. The prior authorizations tend to hold up the process through the insurance companies, and so it just makes it a longer, more draining process. Education around conditions, treatments, and what to expect. And then someone also put logistical support. So you see, you all have some really great responses. All of those fit right into the practical needs associated with it, right? Information is so key. Making sure that we have, you know, good things like good food safety options, hygiene habits, even things like HEPA filters for our HEPA filters for our home and things of that nature gonna be key just to make sure that practically we have what we need. But getting more information about our condition, having meds, having any letters of necessity and things of that nature that helps move that prior authorization process along with getting medication or treatment, having emergency kits and things of that nature. All this matters just for everyday traveling or planning. We're not necessarily talking about taking a trip, a cruise, etc., whatever, but it could also absolutely include those things too. The advocacy component centers around information as well because it's so important, like we were talking about earlier, that we not just look at it as, oh, this is just related to my condition and I only need to worry about it as it relates to my doctor or provider. But no, it's important information for your family to know, for your school or your child's school to know. Any workplace accommodations that need to take place in your for your employer, but it also could be any accommodations that need to take place as it relates to your faith in your place of worship. These are conversations to have with all of the community connections and leaders in your life so we can make sure that you have what you need. Okay. And then the emotional and mental health care health of caregivers is so key and so important. Again, remember calling out once more that caregiver burnout is real and that it can include fatigue, isolation, and also anxiety. We have to keep in mind that mental health access isn't equitable. It still is not, even though we have lots of different programs and things of that nature. And I know we all see every time we log on YouTube, we see a BetterHelp ad, but the reality is that we're still lacking in that area and it's for a number of different reasons. So for caregivers, giving them the support that they need in both a practical and a clinical sense is something that still leaves much to be desired. One of the things is centered around cultural stigma. And so it's important that we normalize exhaustion and that we normalize the need for breaks and support. So I'm going to say that once more. Burnout is real. Safety planning is a necessity, but it's going to be extremely important to make sure that we acknowledge the fact that exhaustion is real and breaks are necessary. So often, much like people talk about mom guilt often, caregiver guilt is real, where people feel like because I need to take care of my loved one or the person that I'm caring for and support it, then that means I can't have any fun. I can't take a night off. I can't take a weekend off. I can't take a break. I just have to go, go, go 24/7. And so it's extremely important that you set yourself up for success so that you can minimize your likelihood of burnout or fatigue and exhaustion by making sure that you acknowledge where you are and that you incorporate breaks in it. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that momentarily as Holly and I tag back and forth. I want to go ahead and bring her into the conversation because she's such a light in this space. And it's super cool when we talk about like who she is and all that she's experienced. So Holly Jones is a phenomenal member of RDDC. So she's living with both a rare disease and several chronic illnesses. But that doesn't define who she is. Let's be clear, like we said earlier. So, in addition to being a rare disease warrior, she is a wife, a mother, a student, an aspiring and an emerging author, a community advocate, and an executive director. So, she joins us today as we are going to talk about that dual role and what it looks like to be both patient and caregiver. And she'll highlight the importance of taking care of you and how to lend support to the patient you're guiding in your life. Holly,
Thank you. That was such a beautiful introduction. I didn't know I was all of that, girl.
you are.
But thank you so much. And thank you, IDF, for having me on this presentation. And I'm glad you said that we're going to be able to bounce off each other because, as you know, I love a good conversation as well. So I guess I'll just start with a little bit of my journey. I always tell people when you're telling your story, if you don't know what to do, go past, present, future. So my past is when I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with polymyositis and interstitial lung disease. And I was given the prognosis that time of 5 years. That was back in 2003. So there wasn't that much knowledge around myositis, especially in a small town, which is where, I'm from Long Beach, Texas. So it's pretty small. I didn't even have a rheumatologist. I had to drive an hour outside of town just to go see a rheumatologist. And so yeah, I just turned 41 this year. So this is literally like my 22nd year living with this rare disease. And over the years, having myositis, it kind of, I guess you could say it is a comorbidity, right? Because I have myositis, but then it came with interstitial lung disease. And then it progressed to pulmonary hypertension. And then the pulmonary hypertension can just transformed into congestive heart failure. And then from the medications that I have to take to treat these illnesses, I developed vasovagal syncope, where my blood pressure drops. And not only that, I'm anemic. So, that's where her story in color came from my own personal journey of how I can pretty much, I always say I can rock a lot of awareness ribbons. So my life is full of stories. And most of the time people was like, have you heard her story? And I was like, you know what? I think there's got to be like a community of women who are experiencing what I'm going through. So that's just a little bit of background. Today, yes, as you can see, I am the founder and CEO of HERstory In Color, but my advocacy journey started at the Myositis Association, and I serve on their board of directors as their chair of development. And I am also the co-leader for the Myositis Women of Color Affinity Group, which is a group that I created on Facebook that is now the first affinity group of the Myositis Association. So I wanted to touch on caregiving. And I think I have to start with the foundation. I think a lot of times it's overlooked. So growing up, my mother and my father were caregivers. My grandmother lived with us growing up, and when I would visit my dad, my grandmother was over there as well. So I grew up watching my parents be caregivers. And when my aunt had a stroke, she moved in with my father, and my father became her caregiver. So it was already, I believe, embedded in me, but knowingly but unknowingly, of how to become, a caregiver. And so on down this journey, I learned how to show gratitude to caregivers. I learned how much work and time and dedication goes into it, but then I also saw the other side of resentment, of guilt, feeling like you're not doing enough. And then oftentimes you're feeling like you're doing too much and there's no time for yourself. And that's hard growing up watching your parents give so much of themselves and then still have to be parents and still have to be employees. And then eventually they become patients themselves. And then the roles flip. I'm no longer daughter, I'm now caregiver. They both were diagnosed with diabetes and congestive heart failure. So then now here I am, mom, a patient, a caregiver to two parents, and putting them before my own health. And so that portion of my life was tough because I was also the mom of a preemie. So it's like, yes, I was a mom, but I was also caregiving for a 3-pound baby while going from her NICU to my mother's hospital room to my father's hospital room all in one day. So to say the most thing that I was reading the questions and you were asking about caregivers and what that means to you. And I feel like it just means service, a heart of service. I truly believe in the golden rule to always treat people the way you want to be treated. And as a patient, I feel like I have to express nothing but gratitude all the time. And because you just never know when you're gonna be the caregiver. And my husband has been my in quotations my caregiver for the last 20 years. So he's never met me healthy. He met me 2 years into my diagnosis. And so when people address him as caregiver, he gets upset because he's like, no, I'm not a caregiver. I'm her husband. This is what I do. And I'm like, but you don't understand the concept because you have a lot of spouses who don't care to give. And they just want to give you your respect and your flowers, knowing that you care and that you give to me on a daily basis. And so I want to say I encourage, like I said, caregivers to give affirmations. Always tell them that they're doing the best like, oh my God, small victories. You did that. I'm so proud of you. Any type of affirmation, do that. And in return, patience, show gratitude. I learned that in my own journey, but I always just say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. If, and I know this may be too TMI, but I have really bad coughing spells. And sometimes I would throw up. And my husband would have to clean it up, right? Like he would help me with that. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you have to see this. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. And he got to the point where he just like yelled at me and was like, stop saying you sorry. And so I started shifting my mindset. And that's another thing I want to talk about too tonight is mindset. But I flipped it, and instead of saying I'm sorry, I would just always say, thank you for helping me. Thank you for this. Thank you for that. And now he's gotten to the point where he's like, stop saying thank you. But I just don't ever want there to be a day where I don't say thank you and he feels unvalued. And so the mindset that I was just now speaking about, so many times as a patient, I was told that I don't look sick. I was told, it's all in my mind or things of that nature. I encourage patients and caregivers to change your mindset, make everything negative a positive. If they say, you don't look sick, just say thank you because they see all the hard work that you're doing, all the physical therapy, all the prayers, all the tears, all the push through that you're doing to get to where you need to go to appear normal. So now I take that as a compliment. And I know for some people that still may be hard. You're not ready to accept it as a compliment. It still hurts your feelings for them to say that to you. But if, when you get to that space, that mindset of, oh, you don't look sick, well, thank you. Thank you. Because I work really hard every day, staying on top of my medications, staying on top of my village, which I know we're going to talk about that also tonight too. But and caregivers, if they say, "Oh, well, you don't do that much," well, I must make caregiving look easy. I must be doing a really good job. Just don't let them get under your skin per se, because you are doing the best you could do. And if you think that you're not doing enough, trust me, you're doing enough. And if you feel like you're doing too much, then you're doing too much. Take that time. Use your resources. Let me listen, Jocelyn. You know I can talk. Just let me know when we getting ready to the village part because that's what's next on my list. But you know, caregiving is tough, and I had to accept caregivers that I never imagined that I thought I would have. Because you always know that you're going to have your parents. And in some form, you know that you're going to possibly have your siblings. But when your friends step up, when strangers step up, your healthcare team steps up, it takes it to a whole nother level. And people always ask me, how have you survived this disease for 22 years and you still have a smile on your face? That's not from me. That's from people pouring into me. That's from people helping me. And that's for me getting out of my head and thinking that I need to isolate myself or I don't need to be a burden to others, you know?
Yeah.
So
I
I,
love that you
I can
mentioned
keep
that.
going.
No, I love that you mentioned that, Holly, because so often, like we talked about earlier, people do think that if I'm the patient, you think, oh, I'm being a burden to someone else and I don't want a burden. That's where that kind of mindset comes from that has us over apologizing, right? That has us saying, I'm sorry for having someone helping us or supporting us. So we're going to talk through some practical steps and ideas of how individuals can kind of help provide support for themselves or their village as it relates to being a patient or a caregiver, because this is how we do what IDF has talked about in their Living Well series. It's all about community and coming together. Remember, you are not alone. And just as Holly just highlighted, she doesn't look like what she's been through because of her pouring into other people and other people pouring into her. And so that's kind of the theme that we have to keep going in every aspect of life. And so, really quickly, we want to talk about highlight six different practical things that individuals can do in order to just help them get and garner some more support. So, creating a care calendar is one that you see here. Building a caregiving toolkit, and feel free to, I guess, screenshot these slides if you find it helpful. Keeping a to-go list, a go bag with emergency contacts, snacks in it, different items that you need, doctors' names, different offices that you may frequent, different pharmacies that you may go to. Things of that nature are extremely important to keep in that caregiving toolkit. It just helps reduce stress because you're more prepared and you're not expending extra energy trying to figure things out. Creating micro care moments, we'll talk about that one a little bit more in a few minutes, but that's going to be really important for both patient and caregiver, and it's something that isn't quite highlighted quite enough. Setting boundaries without guilt, that's a big one that I think most people have challenges with in general. And a lot of that is something that can absolutely elevate your life. Joining a support group. So, Holly talked about her great work with women of color, with TMA, and she helped create an affinity group because she saw a gap and a need there. And creating that support group has now garnered the attention of like hundreds of women of color living with myositis that thought that they were all alone in the world as it relates to their particular rare disease and chronic illness. And the reality is, from what Holly has shared with me over the years, is that these individuals aren't just living with myositis, much like her, they often have other chronic illnesses too. So there is a lot of connection there. And then care for yourself as a caregiver. So, really quickly, we're going to highlight as we're wrapping up some practical ways to apply tools because we believe that knowledge is power, but application is key. Okay. So we have to actually do something with the information. And so, how do we create a care calendar? Some people might be like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's too much. How do I get started? I promise you, in this modern technology, most of us have the tools to get started. So, whether it's a Google Calendar, your Apple Calendar, you can use like WhatsApp, a group text app, but you want to make sure that you're listing out recurring tasks, right? Any rides that need to take place, grocery runs or shopping, meal prep, and appointments. These are things that will help lower the burden. Holly is not just a patient, but she's also a mom. She's still doing carpool. She dropping her daughters off at school. She's
Same
cooking meals. Right, she's cooking meals. So all of these things, okay, what does this look like for the village? So it might be her inviting family, friends, neighbors to take part on this calendar, right? So they know, hey, having a conversation, the girls need picking up at this date and time. Can you pick so and so up from practice? Can you do a pharmacy pickup for me? I asked my husband, my partner, that kind of thing. So it's literally about you having a conversation with individuals and really building out your community with trusted individuals so that you can get certain tasks taken off your plate. If anybody knows anything about the five love languages, this would be like top tier for someone who's acts of service, right? It's someone taking one thing off your list so it lessens your burden, all right? So updating those things regularly and communicating is going to be a key component to making sure that you as a caregiver, supporting a patient and being a part of their village or community, that you are helping balance the load as it relates to caring for this individual that you support or love. All right. So Holly's going to take us away with creating micro care moments.
Okay, yes. So creating micro care moments, pick a consistent time of day. I love doing this. Listen, Jocelyn, no, I'm not professional. No, I am. But this is Judah. This is my Bible. I named him Judah. And every morning I give 10 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes to a scripture. I do it every morning. I take time out for myself and it anchors me. I know some people may not have this type of faith, but I'm sure there's some kind of spiritual practice that you have that can help you start your day in a positive way. And so I encourage you guys to do that. It's a game changer. It gets your mindset ready for the day. And there's this guy who's real that I saw. He's a Marine. And I had gotten into a rut where I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know how to start my day. So I started with this, but then I also started making up my bed, y'all. I know that sounds bad, but I get up now. I make my bed. I put all my decor pillows on there. And it tells me you can't get back in the bed. You cannot get back in this bed. Start your day. And then I get up and I have my piece of fruit. And my friend Kanaya would be so proud of me because I've been incorporating smoothies in the mornings. So I'm just saying, find something consistent. So my mornings, I try to be consistent during school, before school drop off and during school drop off, because that's when I'm in the car with my smoothie or my piece of fruit. Sending a quick text, I literally love doing this because I love the responses that I get from others. And if you don't know what to say, I can give y'all something to say. Just say, hey, you crossed my heart this morning. I just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. And you'd be amazed the responses that you get back, like, oh my gosh, because they're thinking no one's thinking of them. No one, and so when you put that into the atmosphere, then they start to go, well, let me check in on Holly and see how she's doing. She checked in on me last week, and it's kind of you have to go back and forth, but you have to start somewhere, right? Somebody has to make that initiation. You have to want it. It has to be a choice. Schedule or make a 10-15 minute phone call or check-in, right? With someone that you trust or provide support. Enjoy your favorite snack, television show, book. I am a rom-com girl. You know, any TV show, any movie that is romance, I'm all in. That's what brings me joy. And set a date and time for weekly relaxing showers or bath. One thing I can say, and I know that everyone is probably not afforded this, but there are ways around it. When we built our house, I wanted to gain my independence back. Because the myositis, obviously my muscles are too weak for me to get up off the floor or out of the tub without assistance. And so when we built this house, I asked them to please make my shower with a bench in it, a built-in bench. And so now I gained my independence back and I feel so much better. But if you can't afford to have a built-in shower, the bench, there are shower chairs. And they sell these at Walgreens, Walmart, medical equipment stores. And so that having that sense of independence back is it's a game changer because you don't feel like you have to ask for help to get in and out of things that you consider your me time, your privacy, so if you can't get that done, I encourage you, please get a shower chair, a toilet seat riser, whatever you need that's going to help you regain some of that confidence that you may have lost as a chronically ill patient. And then schedule a special activity just for you monthly and coordinate respiratory. I really don't have a special activity, but I do have special activities throughout the year that I know hands down is on my calendar and it's not going anywhere. My Christmas, we have cousins, where me and my girl cousins, we all get together, wear our PJs and celebrate each other. And another thing, it's not an activity, but I do this with my healthcare team. They are not allowed to have my summers and my winters. I only schedule my doctor's appointments in spring and fall. Summer and winter at this point are my favorite seasons, but as I get older, fall is looking a lot better. That summer heat is something else in Texas. So, but yes, they're not allowed to have my summer and my winters because my birthday is in July. Practically my whole household is in July. And the winters, that's family time, that's Thanksgiving, that's Christmas, and it's also my anniversary month in December. So I just do not want to be bothered. I want nothing but pure joy during that time. Any other time you can draw blood every day from January to June. You know what I mean? Like, but there has to come a time where I have to set a boundary and reclaim some of my time and just enjoy a break from the hospital, from the office visits. So maybe that could be something that helps someone where they say, listen, for my birthday month, I'm not scheduling any appointments. It will be okay. Y'all will be all right. I'll be back. So yes, I don't do that. Rotate through different people so your support circle is balanced. Oh my gosh, I love this. And Jocelyn knows I love this because I'm always preaching about how your support circle needs to be just a plethora of different titles. I have And it's hard, right? Because I started over. When I was diagnosed, I was in my hometown. I grew up with these caregivers. I grew up with the support system. I didn't have to worry about someone taking me to a doctor's appointment. I didn't have to worry about anything, even as far as with my children. But when I moved to Houston, I have no family. I had no friends that lived within an hour. All my friends and family were 3 to 4 hours away from me. But I've always been a person. My husband said I can make friends with a stop sign, but I have been always a friendly person, and I know some people are shy, but you'll be amazed what one hello, one simple hello, one simple conversation can lead to. And I have been so blessed to have a conversation with my neighbors. As soon as I moved into the neighborhood, I went over, I said, listen, this is my situation. If you ever see an ambulance over here, fire truck over here, this is what's going on. And they were so kind and said, hey, if you ever need anything, here's my number. Put me down for an emergency contact. The most people have a heart of empathy and a heart of service, especially if you just invite them in, if you invite them into your world. And they don't have to be an everyday thing. I don't talk to my neighbors every day, but I know that if my daughter needs to be picked up from school, or I know if something happens to me within my home, my daughter can go next door and say, hey, Mr. Steve, my mom passed out, or this is what's going on. I called 911. Can you come over and sit with us? I have built a rapport and trust with these people. You do have to vet people. Don't trust everybody, but you do have to vet people, and build your village. I also started building my village through my church. Um, if you want to find people with a heart of service, that's where they are. That's where they reside. That's what they're there for. And so I built friendships and allies through my church, and school moms. You just go join the PTA. Or if you're, in the car riding line, speak, say hello. And your children will bring home friends, right? Get to know their moms, because their friendship means everything to them. And if you correlate with the mom, then she starts to learn your situation. And then she's going to want to help, like, hey, oh, don't worry about it. I'll pick them up. I'll take them to the football game. You rest. And the school staff, which is something I'm excited for. I know it may not come this year, but I'm hoping it comes next year. The toolkit that we are hoping to work on for informing school districts about children who are child caregivers, like my daughters. But yes, the school staff, I go in and I let them know my situation, and I let them know that, hey, my daughters are caregivers for me, and there are going to be days when they go to school and come home and I'm at the hospital. So if their behavior is off, their emotions are off, it's because their first mindset is, how's my mom doing? Is she okay? Those are what, the questions that caregivers have. And so the mom guilt did set in. I remember Jocelyn speaking about that earlier, about mom guilt and how there can sometimes be caregiver guilt and things of that nature. And I did have someone say to me, why would someone in your situation have children when you know that they're going to be caregivers by default? And so, as you guys know, as I said earlier, I always try to turn my negatives into positive. And it hurt my feelings, but when I reflected on it, I said, well, you know what? That's true. I accept that. But I'm also raising two girls with an empathetic heart, with an intellect to understand rare and different diseases and situations and lifestyles. Um, I'm raising them to be advocates, to learn how to speak up for themselves. And, true enough, they do have to help me with some of my daily activities. But I'm thinking that in the long run, the payoff of them watching me, um, I like to say thrive through this disease, is going to help them, because one day they're really going to become caregivers, or they're going to be mothers. And what if their child is diagnosed with a rare disease? Or what if they come across a school friend who has a rare disease like sickle cell or lupus in their class, and their classmates don't want to play with them or understand them because they're different in quotations. And my daughters won't look at them that way. They'll look at them with understanding. So, yeah, I always say just flip the negative into a positive. And I know I kind of went all around the bend, but but
No, you're good. You're good. I really love that because you highlighted so many different components associated with creating those micro care moments. It's called micro care for a reason, right? Because you gotta do it little pieces at a time. When you are a caregiver or even a patient, there's a lot of times where everything that you do have to consider your health and factors associated with it. And so it may not be, oh, let me go get a 1 hour massage every week, like for some other individuals. But the reality is, you can take 10 minutes just for yourself. You can take that 15 to 20 minutes just for yourself, doing it in the way that works best for you. So I love that you shared, hey, I get up and read my Bible. But for some other people, they may have another faith or spiritual practice, like, doing affirmations in the morning or playing worship music or playing an empowering song that they just dance to for no reason. All of those different things are great opportunities for you to take a moment for yourself. And it's important that we give ourselves permission to do that. And so the last key point that we want to highlight here is giving you a practical tool on how to apply some things for caregiving is setting boundaries without guilt. Now, I know I don't want anybody to log off. And y'all will be like, Jocelyn, how do I do that? What are you talking about? Girl, I cannot. Friend, I cannot. I promise you, you can. It's just a little bit at a time, and you have to give yourself permission to do it first. Remember to remind yourself that boundaries are healthy, they are not selfish, and that it's important for you to get to know yourself in a way, whether as a patient or a caregiver or both, that you have to notice and be more aware than anyone around you. You have to be the expert on you in every way so that you know when you're stretched too thin, when you're stressed out, when you're irritable, when you're having, I had a moment the other day and I was like, my levels are off. I can't, but I had to learn how to communicate that to my partner. So it's up to you to decide, hey, what's realistic for you at that time. And it's okay if that changes. If you were able to do something yesterday or maybe even that morning, but you can't do it right now and you need the additional support, make the request. So sometimes it's just making the request. And a lot of times I tell people what I've recognized in my own healing journey living with the autoimmune condition is the boundary that I often have to set is with me. I'll say that again. The boundary that I often have to set is with me. So it's going to be important for you to again be the lived expert on who you are and your condition, but also knowing yourself from a place of awareness better than anything. And so figuring out what's realistic for you and asking for help. So again, that's tapping into that care community calendar, the people or individuals that live in your house, that are in your family, your friend circle, or your extended village, like Holly mentioned, her great connection with her neighbors. We are not best friends. She clearly defined that. We are connected, we are community members, and we care for one another, but I don't talk to them every day, and that's okay. I still know they're going to show up for my children, my husband, and have support for our family when the time comes through. So one of the key things with setting boundaries is centered around not overcommitting yourself to things as either caregiver or patient. This is a conversation that's so beautiful that I often have to have with Holly Jones because as the phenomenal advocate that she is, she likes to say yes to everything. And the reality is we can't. We can't. And so feel free to screenshot this slide and just start practicing the three phrases at the bottom, right? Just saying, hey, I don't have the bandwidth right now to do whatever the task is. It might be to show up to an event. It might be to log on to another webinar. It might be to do something else. But practice saying that and giving yourself permission to saying that. We need your support. So this is again putting out an ask and giving you language on how to say that. We need your support, meaning we as in our family. Can you please help me out with X? Can you please help me out? Do you have the bandwidth to pick up the girls, to pick up the kids, to drop by and pick up my prescription? If I make you a list, can you grocery shop for me? Little things like that make a huge difference in the life of someone living with chronic illness. So this may be the patient making that request or the caregiver, right? Saying, hey, I really just need to take a break and be at the house. I'm still serving as caregiver, still supporting at this time, but can you help out tomorrow and go grocery shopping instead of me having to leave for 2 hours and do it? Little requests like that make a difference. You're not less than, you're not slacking, you're not lazy, you're doing more than enough, like Holly said. So it's important for you to kind of sit in that and rest in that place. And then the last one is, um, I'm not available right now, but I'll get back to you when I can. People often try to commit us to this. They'll make comments like, "Oh, well, you're just over there fixing meals, or you're just they're not completely disabled, so you're just over there doing all these different things." It's important for you to make sure that you hold certain boundaries firm from a place of, I know when I say no to them, I'm saying yes to me.
Yes, and I just want to reiterate say this. I think a lot of people also in my situation, and I'm sure there's others in my situation, my husband is the sole income, right? So that means he has to work, and his job requires him to travel. So a lot of times when I have done these engagements, speaking, they go, "Oh, well, you have your husband to help you." I actually don't. He's gone 80% of the year. So a lot of things I am doing, I have to do because I'm here with just me, my daughters, and our dog. And so it has to get done, and I can only do so much. And so I always rely on my neighbors. I'm like, hey, can your husband come over here and reach up and get this? Because I'm 5'2", I'm vertically challenged. Okay. So some things I cannot do, and I don't do elements. So, and when he's not home, he has confidence in some of the men in this neighborhood through my friendships from my children's being friends with their children. Like I said, it's a network that you build. And their wife will say, "Hey, Holly needs help, wrapping up the pipes because there's a cold storm coming through. Can you go over there and do hers like for us?" And so, I just wanted to put that out there because I don't want people to think, "Oh, but she's mentioned her husband, this, and this." Well, that's true. He does help me when he's home. And we FaceTime and do everything else to stay connected, and he checks in on me, and his job also knows our situation. There's been plenty of times when I was in the hospital and he had to catch a red eye to come home, but like I said, he's been there for 11 years, and so when he got hired on, he told them our situation up front, and he said he needed to know if he would be able to come home at any given time, no questions asked. And they agreed to that. So everybody's situation is different, and just don't assume from outside looking in that just because they're married, that means that they have additional help.
Or
Mine is
24 access to the help that they do have, right?
exactly.
Right. Because we talked about that financial barriers piece in the beginning. It's essential for your family that your husband does work so that you all can have the income that you need to live well. But there are also other elements that require you to tap into the village because he's traveling with work often. So that's another great point, just to add in these final reflections centered around the fact that please don't assign gender roles to someone being a caregiver. Any and everyone
Yes.
can be a caregiver. We've talked about children being caregiver, a parent, male, female, they, friend, gender nonconforming. Every single individual serves and shows up as a caregiver in some way, shape, or form in their life. So remember that for individuals living with chronic illness, that caregivers are the heartbeat of this person. They provide that support that we talk about, that support that helps them not just complete tasks, but have connection to community. And it's important that we honor, uplift, and listen to caregivers. Holly highlighted that as well. The quick text, the quick phone call, the quick moment of appreciation, an encouraging meme, all these things make a difference when people feel alone and don't feel like they're thought of, or are necessarily not feeling as appreciated as they would hope for. So seek trusted organizations for resources like IDF, RDDC, other peer groups, support groups, and educational agencies. So we want to say, as we close out, for you to drop in the Q&A, what's one act of compassion that you'll commit to as it relates to caregiving, either for yourself or those you're connected to, that you'll do as a result of what you've learned today or this evening? What's one act of compassion you'll commit to as either a caregiver or a patient yourself. Like, what will you do for yourself and for those you're connected to? So please drop that in the Q&A box. And while that's being wrapped up, we're so excited and grateful for your presence on today. We're going to turn it back over to Emma so that she can help us navigate the rest of our Q&A. We appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that incredible presentation. I have so many great takeaways. I have screenshotted some things, I wrote some things down. A couple that really stuck with me are I loved your point that caregivers are more than the tasks that they complete. That can't be emphasized enough. And then, Jocelyn, I also loved your point that the boundary that you most have to set is with yourself. I think that really resonated with me. And I think that really resonated with a lot of folks in our audience. So thank you so much. I don't at this point see any questions in our Q&A, and I know we are butting up against that 8:30 mark. So if you guys are okay with it, I think we're going to go ahead and keep on cruising with our couple of last slides. But Jocelyn and Holly, I just want to thank you so much. This was incredible. I got so much out of it. I think we heard in the Q&A in the chat that our folks who joined us tonight really got a lot out of it as well. And I just really both, appreciate both your time, sharing your perspectives, sharing your expertise with us, and Holly opening up so much about your experience and your journey from all different aspects, caregiver yourself, receiving help as a caregiver. This was just so eye-opening, and I really enjoyed this time. So thank you so much to you both.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right. Before we wrap up, I am going to go ahead and share a couple of IDF resources, as well as some upcoming events. So primaryimmune.org is your go-to website for additional resources, upcoming events, and more. All IDF materials are free to access, print, or have mailed directly to you. And if you had a question tonight that maybe you didn't have a chance to ask or something else that you'd love to consult with someone else about, you can go ahead and contact our board certified patient navigator through our Ask IDF program. She will personally connect with you to tackle your question and to direct you to appropriate resources. You can even take IDF on the road with our engaging podcast series. You can find programs like Bold Conversations, Undiagnosed, and Chronic 20s by searching for the IDF podcast wherever you listen to yours. We also have a YouTube channel where you can find recordings from all of our digital education events. And I saw someone had asked in the Q&A if this webinar will be uploaded, and it will be available in the coming weeks, both on the IDF website and on the IDF YouTube channel. A new resource that I'm excited to share with you about is our IDF Caregiver Guide. I think Jocelyn might have mentioned that during her talk, but IDF collaborated with real PI caregivers and patients to create this guidebook, which provides thoughtful and compassionate advice for navigating life and finding balance as you care for another with a chronic condition. It is PI specific, but I think that the content and the advice and guidance can really be universally applicable, so we definitely encourage you to check that out. For those of you who don't know, Walk for PI season is upon us. Did you know that the Walk for PI fully funds our IDF research grant program? Gather your friends and family and start a walk team to be a part of the impact. By participating, you are making PI research possible and helping to improve the lives of those impacted by primary immune deficiency. For more information, visit walkforpi.org. Find a safe and supportive environment to link up with others impacted by PI through our Get Connected groups. These groups are free, virtual, and volunteer-led opportunities to connect with others with PI all over the U.S. We offer location-based groups, diagnosis-specific groups, as well as nationwide groups. And because we meet virtually, you can join any group that works for you. Check out the IDF calendar of events to find a group that might interest you. In addition to our Get Connected groups, we also offer facilitated support groups. We have ones for young adults, parents, and spouses and partners. And if you're looking for something one-on-one, we also have a peer support program where we connect you with another individual in a similar situation for a one-on-one opportunity. And here at IDF, we are so proud to offer educational programming each month, as well as various in-person events throughout the year. Here's a look at some of our upcoming programs this fall. And to our audience members, we thank you so much for joining us tonight and for being engaged with our presenters and participating. We're going to now launch our final poll. Again, we're going to give it about 30 seconds so everyone has a chance to answer. And our question to our audience that we pose to you in closing is, what is one action that you are likely to take after this webinar to better support caregivers? All right, awesome. It looks like we have a good mix of how folks plan to use the skills and the information that you took away from tonight's program. So that is awesome to see. Thank you so much. All right, we're getting ready to close up. Before we go, we want to thank our sponsors again once more for their generous support of IDF's educational programming and for their commitment to our community.